My belief is that what is missing from our lives, what is missing from is intimacy. I think that is, we have, what the government has done, what feminists have done, what the child abuse industry has done, what these organisms, if you like, have done, is they have made it very difficult for people to interact closely with each other without risking some form of severe punishment. If they get married, there's a good chance they're going to get divorced. If they deal with children, there's a good chance they're going to be had up for something, blah, blah. And I think the government has purposely made it very difficult for people to have intimate relationships without them risking serious problems. And the consequence is that we're splitting up, we're not getting married, we're not living with each other, there are more people living alone, etc., etc., etc. And I think this is purposeful. I actually think that this is of benefit to government. Governments benefit when there's disharmony. The more disharmony, the more badness that there is out there, the more that they can justify, the more the population are fearful, the more they want the governments to protect them, the more funding they give to the government. So the more crime and criminality out there, the worse it is for us, but the better it is for those in power. They benefit from crime. The police benefit from crime. It's wonderful. The more crime, the better. The more jobs they have, the more money, the more funding they get, the bigger do they grow. The bigger do their departments grow. The higher up the ladder they grow, the more important do they become. So they stir it up. They want a war on drugs. They want domestic violence. They love domestic violence. It gives them something to do. But it doesn't. It's of no benefit for the rest of us. And so, intimacy is being destroyed by the nosy Parkers in government, by the feminist view of what relationship, the ridiculous notions that feminists have about relationships are being imposed on the rest of us. And what is forgotten is all of this, is that children need to be hugged, they need to be kissed, they need to be loved, even sometimes by their teachers, especially if they've fallen over, hurt themselves, they're upset, what have you.
So men have become frightened of touching kids. Male teachers are not going into primary schools. Edicts are coming out from councils telling teachers not to touch children between the shoulders and the knees, not to let them sit on your lap if you're reading them a story. And this is, although it says it's aimed at men and women, it's aimed at men.
Dude, they're on every channel. Everybody is doing something on sex offenders. It's like, dude, I got it. There's people out there touching kids, But it's not everybody. It's a very small portion of the population. So, take it down a few, because you're making it awkward out there. Dude, you can't say hi to kids anymore. I love kids. I love kids. I like making faces at them on the airplane, making them laugh. Now parents are like, is that a sex offender? They start huddling their kids in, making me feel like a freak, I'm terrified of kids now. Remember back in the day when a kid would come walking up to you, you could pat him on the head. Hey there, Rusty, how you doing, right? Now a kid comes walking up and I'm like, dude, get that thing the away from me. Get it away from me. Serious, dude, get it away from me. Hands are up high, not aroused, just terrified. Please, for the love of God, I'm serious. Get that thing away from me, all right?
You're a psychologist. Harlow's monkeys. Monkeys that are brought up without touch and affection grow up delinquently. They can't bring up their own children. They often kill their own children. There clearly is, there are important reasons why human beings, adults and children, need to be touched. And we know that it affects us. We know how powerful is touch as adults. It makes the world of difference. The children have got to be denied this to a very large extent in their lifestyles from those who are important adults around them.
The point is you can talk to a 5-year-old all day about how to hold his foot to do something. Yeah. Or you can just grab the foot and do that, and he's learned it from then on. And I just do that now.
Yes.
And before I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I resented the fact that I felt I couldn't do it.
Yeah. If you're a woman, you've had no problem.
Precisely. It's outrageous. So I do it now, and no one's, I dare anyone to say I'm doing anything wrong.
Well, I think what you're doing there is what you've described there, on the face of it, seems extremely trivial. But in reality, has a big impact, not only for the way in which you teach and the effectiveness of your teaching, but with regard to how the child feels about you. Because a woman can do that, and so from the child's point, oh yes, women are warm and cuddly, but he doesn't. He's cold, he's distant, he's nasty. And that's how he grows up to see you. And you have to behave in this way. Why? Because of the feminists and because of the hysterics in the child abuse industry. These people have, in my view, caused enormous damage. These people, in my view, have caused enormous damage. And I have said on my website, I'll say it again, I'm sure you won't put this out, but I think the National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children has done more harm to our children than all the paedophiles in this country put together. I believe it. I think I can justify it. I think I can prove it to the extent that anything can be proved. And I really am very angry that we have this parasitic organisation in our midst, taking our money, by and large, to demonise men and fathers in the eyes of everybody.
That same brush has been used to paint all men, you know. Watch out for men. It's a bad message for men, it's a bad message for kids, and it's an untrue message, and it's statistically not sound.
Problems with children today is because adults have distanced themselves to such an extent and are too scared anyway to get too close to them. The children aren't being fed the right information. They're having to discover it for themselves. There's no one to be close enough to lead them through the emotional situations, to guide them closely. And they're seen as, they're kind of objects. They're distant, from a man's point of view. Children are kind of distant objects, unless they happen to have their own. And so in a sense, we're no nearer than we were in the Victorian era, if you see what I mean. You see children around you in the street, maybe getting up to mischief, maybe playing truant. Nobody says anything. Jimmy Bulger, wasn't he? He was walked out of the middle of the shopping centre, and so you had little Jimmy Bulger, the two boys who eventually killed him, walking around the street during school hours. Nobody says anything.
But well-disciplined children don't become criminals, don't become vulnerable to abuse, and don't need government intervention. This is bad news for a long list of agencies. The discipline provided by men doesn't just apply to his own children. The positive influence of men extends to all children they come across, but this influence has been ceaselessly eroded, such that now, men are considered suspect for showing any interest whatsoever in children and their welfare.
You got a light?
You gotta be kidding me. Toto, look at this kid.
Jesus Christ, what are you, 13? And you getting high? You're not gonna give us a lecture, are you?
No, not a lecture, a life lesson.
We're primed by the negative activities of the NSPCC and the government to actually expect aberrant behaviour from men around children, and so any accusation is readily believed. In self-defence, men are forced to distance themselves from children for fear of what they may be accused of.
Just put the joint down, kid.
Just give me a light, old man, or I'll tell my dad you put your hand on my knee.
The alienation of men from children. For men to feel safe around children, the best thing that they can do is to be cold and distant. And that's exactly what they've become. Men have become cold and distant to a large extent. So, for example, teachers, male teachers, won't go near the children. They'll be rigid. And so children grow up thinking, God, men are cold and distant. And they are. They have to be, for their own protection. And I, as a male, resent that very deeply, and I think a lot of men do as well. And they're angered by it. And a lot of boys have missed out as a result of that, boys in particular. I mean, it's a double whammy for them, because if they haven't got the male role model, and they haven't got the affection, they're missing a lot. Hence all the delinquency, hence almost the psychopathy in our society.
The government and charities want themselves to be the only agencies involved in child protection, instead of the most appropriate and the most effective child protector on the planet, men. Perversely, by removing men from protecting children, they create much larger numbers of children in need of protection. This should be ironic, but it's actually great for business.
What we have is a situation where we are governed by organisms, government, feminists, the abuse industry, whose sole interest is stirring up as much hatred as they possibly can. And we see this all the time in their rhetoric, constantly trying to cast suspicion on those who have intimate relations with each other. Is the man sexually assaulting the child? Is he being domestically violent towards his wife? Is he raping the woman that he's dating? It's all negative. That's a major problem, which the men's movement will obliterate. It will.